Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
The first time they left me out, I thought it was a mistake, some sort of tech issue, like maybe they forgot to add my number to the family group text after I changed it that year. But by the second time, I started to understand the pattern. The fifth time was just a punchline to a joke I hadn't realized I'd been starring in for a decade. And still, every December, I waited for it like a fool, for the ding of the message, the ping of inclusion, some fragile gesture of belonging. And every December, they posted the photo without me. Same couch, same grinning faces, same tacky red and green striped pajamas they all swore they just threw together. The same Christmas Eve caption, "Wouldn't be the holidays without all our hearts in one room." Except mine never made the cut. I don't know why it hit me harder this year than the last. Maybe because I'd finally stopped pretending it didn't bother me. Maybe because I was sitting in my Manhattan apartment, 44 floors up, surrounded by high ceilings and expensive silence, and I realized that I could buy every damn pajama set in Macy's, and it still wouldn't make them call me. Or maybe because this time, my niece, sweet little Megan, who used to braid my hair with tiny glitter clips, was old enough to hold a hot chocolate in one hand and point at the camera with the other like she'd been coached. I wasn't even sure she remembered me. The photo hit Facebook at 7:03 p.m. sharp, like it always did. My sister Abby posted it, and within 5 minutes, the comments began rolling in. Beautiful family. So lucky to be together. Merry Christmas from the Nelsons. I wasn't tagged. I never was. And yet, I couldn't stop staring at it. My mother in the middle, smug and smiling like someone who'd won something. My brothers on either side, their wives practically glowing with the smug, airbrushed confidence of women who'd never questioned if they belonged. And behind all of that, a single empty space on the couch, like maybe someone was missing. But not missing enough to notice. You'd think it was just a photo, right? A stupid family tradition that I was too busy or too distant or too damn complicated to be part of. That's what I told myself the first year, and the second, and the third. But the truth was never about schedules or miles or misunderstandings. The truth was more brutal and more boring. I didn't fit. Not emotionally, not ideologically, not aesthetically. At some point, I became the kind of daughter who made them uncomfortable. I remember my brother Jake saying once, at some wedding, I think that I was kind of intense for the Midwest. It was a joke, but not really. I'd graduated from Brown at 22, launched a startup at 25, and was on the cover of a business magazine before 30. I wasn't trying to prove anything, at least not consciously. But while I was out building things and pitching investors and chasing time zones, they were all settling down within 20 miles of each other. They bought houses near cul-de-sacs and enrolled their kids in the same Lutheran preschool we all went to. They went in on a boat together, for God's sake. A literal boat. And me? I missed Megan's 3rd birthday because I was in Singapore closing a deal. I forgot about Easter once because I was stuck on a layover in Dubai. I sent my parents a designer espresso machine one Christmas, and my mother mailed it back. "We drink Folgers," she wrote on a post-it stuck to the box. Not whatever this is. The thing is, I never stopped trying. I still sent gifts. I still called on birthdays. I still asked for the family recipes even though I knew they'd get around to finding them for the rest of eternity. I was always one text away from booking a flight. I wanted to show up. They just didn't want me to. When I was 16, I applied to a writing program at Stanford. My English teacher encouraged me, said I had voice. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, practically vibrating with the envelope in my hands, and my mom saying, "Well, that's cute, but what about pharmacy school?" That's the moment I realized we weren't speaking the same language. I wanted to live a life. They wanted me to live theirs. So I left. Slowly, at first. Then all at once. But leaving doesn't mean not caring. That's the part nobody talks about. You can pack your bags and change your zip code and get matching luggage for every goddamn country, but there's still a version of you that sits quietly in the corner of your childhood living room, waiting to be invited back in. This year, on the morning of December 24th, I got a voicemail from my mother. She still refuses to text. "Hi, sweetheart," she said in that fake sweet voice she uses when she's about to make you feel like garbage. "Just wanted to say we're thinking of you. I know this season's hard when people choose loneliness over family. But we're all here if you decide to come around. Anyway, love you. Merry Christmas. People choose loneliness." That's what she said. Like I woke up and selected isolation off a menu. Like I opted out of the matching pajamas, the peppermint schnapps, the passive-aggressive card games and church service where nobody really sings anymore. Like I made that choice. I listened to that voicemail 4 times before deleting it. Then I looked at their new photo again. My sister's dog was even in it this year, wearing a miniature pair of striped pajamas, tongue out, tail wagging, sitting exactly where I used to sit. And that's when I knew. This year, I wasn't going to wait for the ding. I wasn't going to refresh Facebook like some sad, desperate glitch in the algorithm. I wasn't going to be the invisible Nelson anymore. They wanted a frame that I didn't fit into? Fine. I'd give them a frame so big, they'd never look away again. There's a weird kind of loneliness that doesn't feel like silence or space, or even distance. It feels like noise, but no one listening. That's the kind of loneliness I've perfected over the years, wearing it like a custom-tailored coat that cost more than my parents' first car, standing on stages in front of thousands while the only voices I really wanted to hear stayed conspicuously absent. I went to Brown because I wanted something different. I stayed in New York because I was afraid if I ever moved back home, I'd turn into one of those women who bake depression into casseroles and call it family tradition. I launched my first company at 25, sold it by 27, and had my face on the cover of an investor magazine the same year my cousin Jenny got married in a barn wearing cowboy boots and holding a bouquet of sunflowers wrapped in lace from our grandmother's wedding dress. I sent a gift. She never said thank you. At 31, I gave a TED Talk about resilience, and I remember thinking while the crowd stood and clapped and someone from NPR tried to corner me afterward about a podcast deal, that my mom probably wouldn't even watch it if I sent her the link. And I was right. When I brought it up months later, casually over the phone, she said, "Oh, right, your little seminar thing. Did it go okay?" Like I'd hosted a Tupperware party or given a presentation on copier maintenance to 4 interns in a basement. Last year, she asked if I was still working at the Google, as if I'd somehow applied for a job in their janitorial department and gotten promoted to CEO overnight. I don't work at Google. I've never worked at Google. But to her, the entire tech industry is just a fog of confusing buzzwords and overpaid kids with bad posture and weird hair. I tried to explain once what a pitch deck was and she said, "Oh, so like a PowerPoint?" I nodded, even though it wasn't really the same thing, because what was the point? This year, I spent Christmas Eve exactly how you'd imagine a successful, single woman in Manhattan would, alone in a penthouse apartment. The city stretched out beneath me like a glittering middle finger, a glass of champagne in one hand and my phone in the other. Scrolling through the usual digital parade of performative joy. Their pajama photo came in right on cue, same as always, posted by Abby with her trademark faux humble caption, "Another perfect year with everyone we love." And there it was again, my exclusion, neatly cropped and filtered and wrapped in peppermint-scented denial, framed by smiles that looked practiced and love that felt suspiciously symmetrical. I stared at that photo for a long time, too long, until the bubbles in the champagne went flat and the room started to blur around the edges, and I suddenly thought, what if this wasn't just a one-way punishment? What if I made them see me, even if only for a moment? What if I became so big, so loud, so undeniable, that they couldn't crop me out without the whole picture falling apart? So I did something impulsive, which isn't like me, not anymore. I used to be impulsive in college, cutting my own bangs in a dorm bathroom or flying to Berlin for a boy who quoted Camus, but now I'm calculated. Precise. Cold, even. But this wasn't cold. This was hot. Boiling. This was fire under skin. I opened my laptop, still tipsy and furious, and probably halfway to a terrible PR scandal, and I googled billboard rentals in Times Square. The form was short. The cost was outrageous. I paid about $2,500 per hour for a 12-hour ad. So, like, around $15,000 in total. Yeah, I know now that doesn't add up, okay? Don't write me comments about it. I was drinking Veuve like it was tap water and trying not to cry. The number didn't matter in the moment. What mattered was the impact. I didn't even have a design yet. No caption. No concept. Just a sick, sarcastic glee rising in my throat like a song I hadn't heard since childhood. I stared out the massive window of my penthouse, the skyline twinkling like smug little stars, and whispered to no one, "You want to keep me out of the frame? Fine. I'll buy the goddamn frame." I grabbed my phone and texted Amanda, my assistant, the kind of assistant who makes coffee appear before I've said I want it, who knows my calendar better than I do, who once returned a Gucci scarf I'd lost in Aspen without me even noticing it was gone. I wrote 8 words, no punctuation, no context, no explanation. Just, make it bold, make it Christmassy, make it hurt. Then I put my phone down, finished the bottle, and waited for the world to wake up. December 20th dawned with the kind of brightness that made even Manhattan's grime look like it belonged in a snow globe, the city shimmering through steam vents and flashing taxi lights like it was auditioning for a commercial about second chances. I woke up with a champagne headache and the vague memory of having set fire to the entire concept of subtlety the night before. I padded barefoot across marble floors, wrapped in a robe that cost more than my sister's wedding dress, and opened the curtains with one dramatic tug, as if the city owed me some kind of applause for what I had done. And in a way, it did, because there it was. Right there. High above the chaos of Times Square, my face stared back at me from 100 feet up, blown larger than life and twice as unapologetic. I looked good, sleek red blazer, crisp collar, dark hair pulled into a power bun, one eyebrow slightly arched like I knew something you didn't. I was holding a mug of cocoa in one hand, fingers perfectly manicured, and beneath that image, in white serif font with just the right touch of seasonal cruelty, the caption blazed, "Too successful to fit in the frame. Happy holidays, Mom." It was savage. It was poetic. It was everything I had wanted it to be and more. The billboard was running on a 12-hour loop, every 5 minutes, cycling through ads for Cologne and Broadway shows, and somehow, between all of it, there I was, too loud, too bold, too festive to ignore. I didn't even have to be there in person to feel the shockwave rippling outward like heat from a bonfire. Because the internet? The internet noticed. TikTok found it first, of course. Some girl visiting from Ohio filmed it while walking through Times Square with her boyfriend and said, "Y'all, this woman is straight up dragging her family for Christmas," and within 3 hours it had 1 million views. Comments poured in like sleet, half of them cheering, the other half foaming at the mouth about family values and respect. Then came the local news segment, a breathless little piece with a blonde anchor saying, "Well, it looks like someone's been very naughty this year." They blurred my name on the photo, but not well enough. By lunch, I was trending. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, that I danced around my penthouse in victorious glee like a woman in a rom-com who just left a toxic man. But what I really did was sit on the edge of my sectional sofa, still in that damn robe, watching the views climb, my heart rattling against my ribs like it wanted to escape my chest entirely. Because no matter how good it felt, no matter how much they deserved it, I had taken a shot that could never be undone. And deep down, I knew it. My phone rang just after 3 p.m. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway, my voice still husky from the night before. "Hello." There was a pause, and then I heard her, "Abby." My sister. 7 years of silence, broken not by apology or concern, but by raw, unfiltered rage. "You really think this is funny?" she hissed. "No hello, no warm-up, just straight into it like a sniper. You embarrassed mom. You made Christmas about you. I could have argued. I could have laughed or cried or told her how many Christmases I'd spent alone, watching their lives play out in matching polyester while mine unraveled in designer solitude. But I didn't. I just let her yell, let the fury roll over me like water off a glass wall. I waited until she finished, until her voice cracked, and then I said, I didn't make Christmas about me. I just made sure you remembered I exist. She hung up. I put the phone down gently, walked into my bathroom, and ran a hot bath. I poured in something expensive and lavender-scented, sank into the water until it touched my collarbone, and pulled my phone back into my damp hand. I snapped a photo of myself, eyes half closed, face serene, no makeup, no filter. Then I posted it on Instagram with a caption so calm it practically whispered, unbothered, moisturized, vindicated. The comments exploded. Some people thought it was iconic, an act of feminist defiance, a holiday protest against performative family values and patriarchal conformity. Others thought it was cruel, unnecessary, proof that success had made me arrogant. And maybe it had. Maybe I'd traded compassion for cleverness, empathy for strategy. Maybe I'd become the kind of woman who made headlines instead of cookies. But at least now I wasn't invisible. At least now they couldn't pretend I didn't exist. I was halfway through a cucumber water and a rerun of Law and Order when it happened. A soft ping. A new message request on my phone. Not from a stranger. Not from a fan. Not from an angry cousin looking to remind me I'd ruined the family name. No. This message came from someone I hadn't heard from in almost a decade. Dad. Just that name. No emojis. No profile photo. Just a plain, gray circle and one message sitting there like a ghost that had been waiting to rise. I saw the billboard. We should talk. I stared at it for a long time, fingers hovering over the screen, the bathwater turning cold around me. Because I hadn't expected that. I hadn't expected him, and maybe I should have. Maybe the frame had always been too small for both of us. I was 17 when my father handed me a Bible for Christmas, unwrapped and already dog-eared, with my name written in pen on the inside cover as if that was supposed to make up for the fact that he'd once promised me a down payment for college and then quietly spent the money on an extended fishing trip to the Dakotas with his brother. I remember holding it in my lap, cold fingers tracing the soft, worn leather, trying not to let the insult land, trying not to cry in front of everyone, trying not to let that familiar knot of shame harden into something permanent inside my chest. He said, "You'll need this more than tuition money," like he was passing down wisdom instead of washing his hands of me. I nodded, swallowed whatever I was going to say, and excused myself from the living room to cry in the bathroom with the faucet running. I didn't touch that Bible again. Not that year. Not ever. I carried that moment like a bone splinter in my ribcage for years, silent, invisible, but always there when I breathed too deep. And even now, all this time later, I couldn't think of him without feeling that old, tired mixture of anger and resignation. I didn't hate him, not in the way people assume daughters hate their absentee fathers. I resented him, yes. I mourned the version of him I never got. But hate requires energy, and eventually, I'd spent all of mine. So when the message came, I saw the billboard. We should talk. I wasn't sure what to feel. My first instinct was to ignore it, to let it rot unread in the digital purgatory where estranged relatives go to die. But something about it lodged itself in my mind, a question mark that refused to flatten. He was in the city, apparently. Passing through. Just for a few days, he said in a follow-up text. Thought maybe we could get lunch. I don't want anything. I just want to see you. There was no apology in those words. No acknowledgement of the years he'd been silent, or the birthdays missed, or the daughter he'd watched disappear from his family without once asking why. But there was something else. Maybe sincerity, maybe guilt, maybe just age finally catching up to him. Whatever it was, I said yes. Against my better judgment, against my therapist's probable advice, and against every icy instinct I'd sharpened into survival, I agreed. We met at a diner in Chelsea. Not one of the cute, Instagrammable ones with overpriced avocado toast and fake neon on the walls, but a real diner. 4 mica tables, cracked leather booths, coffee that tasted like it had been sitting in the pot since Tuesday. He looked smaller than I remembered, his posture rounded, his face softer in the jowls. He stood when I walked in, smiled like it didn't ache, and said, "You look like your mother." I didn't respond. I slid into the booth and waited for him to speak first. The conversation was halting at first, like trying to start a car that hasn't run in years. He talked about the drive-in, about the weather, about how Times Square looked different than it used to, and I listened in stiff silence, sipping bad coffee and watching his hands tremble slightly as he stirred cream into his cup. Finally, he said it. Not the apology, but the closest he could manage. "I never knew how to love someone like you. You always looked like you were halfway out the door." I stared at him for a long moment, not sure if I wanted to laugh, scream, or leave. But instead, I said what had been sitting on my tongue for decades. Maybe because I was. Because no one ever asked me to stay. He flinched just a little, like the words landed harder than he expected, and in that small crack in his composure, I saw the truth. He wasn't a villain. He was just a man who never knew what to do with a daughter who didn't color inside the lines. We sat there for a while after that. No big emotional breakthroughs, no dramatic tears or swelling music. Just silence and lukewarm coffee and the sound of forks clinking against plates around us. Then, as I reached for my coat, he pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small velvet box, worn at the corners, like it had been carried for a long time. He slid it across the table without a word. I opened it and stared down at the tiny gold ornament inside. My name was etched on it in cursive, the way you see on delicate Christmas shop souvenirs, the kind people buy for new babies or newlyweds. I picked it up carefully, the metal cool against my palm, and he said, barely above a whisper, "Your mom never hung it." I kept it, and that did something to me I wasn't ready for. It didn't undo anything. It didn't fix a single broken bone between us. But it cracked the shell I'd spent years building, just enough to let something through. I nodded, slipped the ornament back into the box, and stood. I told him thank you, not for the gift, but for showing up. He looked like he wanted to say more, but I didn't give him the chance. I walked out into the cold December air, blinking against the sharpness of it, and breathed deep for the first time in what felt like days. When I got back to my apartment, Amanda was waiting with her ever-present laptop and that look she gives me when something major lands in my inbox. She turned the screen toward me, her tone just a little breathless. "You've got mail," she said, like this was still the 90s and not a digital battlefield of instant headlines. On the screen, the subject line gleamed like a dare. "Times Square woman. Let's talk." The sender? A producer from Good Morning America. I didn't open it right away, because for the first time in years, someone I needed to hear from had already said enough. The envelope was glossy, thick, and hand-addressed in her mother's unmistakable looping cursive, the kind of penmanship that made every grocery list look like a wedding invitation. It arrived on a Thursday afternoon, wedged between a water bill and a flyer for gutter cleaning, as if it hadn't been handcrafted for the sole purpose of ruining Madison's week. She held it in one hand, coffee in the other, her thumb brushing the waxy gold trim along the flap. She didn't open it right away. She didn't need to. She already knew. It was like clockwork every year since she moved to the city. Every December, her parents would send out their annual holiday card. Not just a card, really. A full-blown production. Matching outfits, carefully selected backdrops, often involving fake snow, fake smiles, and very real exclusion. Her parents, David and Susan Hart, in their cranberry red sweaters, her sister Danielle with her husband Tom, and their 2 insufferably perfect children, her brother Scott with his baby-faced fiancée whose name Madison could never remember. Everyone's smiling like they just won the lottery and no one had ever heard the phrase middle child syndrome. Everyone, accept her. For years. That's how long it had been since Madison's face appeared in one of those carefully curated snapshots of familial bliss. First year, she got a text from her mom the day after the cards were sent. "So sorry, sweetie. There just wasn't a good time to get you in the picture. Next year for sure." The second year, silence. The third year, her sister told her, in that condescending voice she used when pretending to be reasonable, "You live in a different time zone. Maddie, it's not personal. You're just kind of hard to schedule. Not personal." That phrase had started to feel like a slow-acting poison. Not personal, but you're not invited. Not personal, but we forgot. Not personal, but we're going to act like you don't exist again. Madison stared at the envelope while sitting cross-legged on her studio apartment couch, her laptop open to a blank document that was supposed to be a pitch deck. Instead, her eyes tracked the paper in her hand like it was a loaded weapon. She set her coffee down, took a slow breath, and sliced the envelope open with her fingernail, careful not to tear the front. There it was. A glossy, full-color trifold card with metallic lettering and an obnoxiously cheerful font at the top. "Happy Holidays from the Hart family." The photo took up nearly the entire front panel. Same as always, coordinated outfits, fake snow, and smiles so wide it was a miracle no one pulled a muscle. Her parents were in the center, arms around their golden children and their golden children's children. No Madison. Not even a mention. She flipped to the back, where her mom usually wrote a long note about the year's accomplishments. "Danielle's oldest made honor roll again. Future Yale grad. Scott's startup is in talks with investors. Watch out, Shark Tank." Then came a closing line that made Madison's teeth clench. "So blessed to have our whole family together this year." Whole family. Madison felt that familiar hollow thud in her chest, the kind that comes not from surprise, but from painful confirmation. They had done it again. Forgotten her? No. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was exclusion. It was intentional. The worst part wasn't being left out. The worst part was knowing how expected it had become. She placed the card on the coffee table like it was made of something fragile and toxic, then leaned back, her head resting on the worn cushion of the couch she had dragged home 3 years ago from a Craigslist ad in the pouring rain. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried about this in a long time. Now, the hurt came with a thin layer of resignation, like when you realize the stain on your favorite shirt isn't coming out, and you wear it anyway, because screw it, it's still your favorite. Except today. Today felt different. Maybe it was the way her name had been skipped over entirely this time. Maybe it was the way her mom's handwriting still looked perfect, as if to say everything here is polished, you just didn't make the cut. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in her life, Madison had something to hold over them. Something they hadn't seen coming. She reached for her laptop, tapped the spacebar, and watched the screen come to life. A folder on her desktop blinked, labeled simply, covered, JPG. She double-clicked it, revealing the mock-up her designer friend had made just a week ago, the glossy, brilliant image of her face staring back from a magazine cover, bold text screaming, Forbes 30 under 30, Madison Hart, founder of Thorne and Company. She smiled, and this time it wasn't tight-lipped or bitter. It was sharp. There was something electric behind her eyes. A spark she hadn't felt in years. The upload bar on her screen ticked upward, blue and steady. 10%. 20. 30. She didn't need to be in their photo. She was about to send them something far more memorable. Something they wouldn't be able to ignore. Something with her name on it, in font big enough to crush every polite silence they'd ever weaponized. The file uploaded with a satisfying ping. Her email draft was already open. She clicked send all. Then she leaned back and waited for the buzzing to start.